Welcome back to Thompson to Clark. That is not a young Brad Evans right there. Though if we use some of that de-aging technology, you might be able to pass for a young Brad Evans. Brad Evans is on vacation. I'm actually going to see him this week. He's back in the Bay Area for the first time in forever. So I asked my friend Davis here to jump on, and he's going to take Brad's spot for the week. What's up, man?
Nothing much. I was shocked when you asked me, but I do kind of look like a young Brad, I guess, a little bit. I can't grow a beard as well as him, but he did post that picture, I think, a couple of weeks ago about him at a Giants game, I think in his mid-20s. I'm like, yeah, I could kind of look like that guy. There is a thing where, again, I get this a lot from my girlfriend and friends, like a lot of white guys do look alike. And I'm like, yeah, out of a certain look. But no, I mean, you did my show a few weeks ago. That was dope. You do that. We talked about all sorts of things, and we talked Giants at the end, and how I thought it was looking for them, and kind of a lot's happened since then. I mean, at that time, it seemed like Matos was going to be the one to catch fire, and then it's been Ramos instead.
Ramos, all the way to the All-Star team, he's caught fire.
Yeah, that was unexpected when they said Logan Webb, and that's what you guys have projected at the start based off his second place Cy Young finish last year. And just the fact that he's the new Lincecum, the new Matt Cain, he doesn't get the run support, but he can go 7, he can get outs, and it's a low ERA considering. But to have two guys, and I always take more pride in sending a position guy to the All-Star game, because, and I had to look it up today, I'm like, there hasn't been that many in terms of fresh faces. It was like Brandon Belt, Jock Peterson, Marco Scudero. I completely forgot about that. Hunter Pence, and then
I think B. Cross made it before,
but he had made it twice. Joe Panic had made it once, but and then the tainted Melky Cabrera All-Star MVP, which was, I mean, that was a thrill when it was happening, but for it to all go down the drain, like I think 2 or 3 weeks after that, it was just like,
it was very soon. The Pablo Sandoval winning the MVP that one year. I think he had like 2 doubles. I went to, this is going to age me, but I remember going to the All-Star game in 1984. I was like a little kid, and it was like a special thing. And, the thing about the All-Star game today is I think they try and still make it special, but it's not like as crazily special as it was when I was younger, but I still dig it. I think it's important to the players. You see a lot of first timers. I think there's something like 32 first timers this year who are going to make the All-Star game, which is really cool because you never know if you make it back. Like, you mentioned Joe Panic, Joe Panic, we thought he was going to be in the league for a while, and he didn't last very long. So
I thought I get a Crawford to Panic. I thought that would be the new thing for
he played so well in the World Series and the playoffs. It was crazy. Okay, but before we even get into this, one of the reasons why I like the idea of you coming on here is because you're a younger fan than Brad and I. Brad and I are like old school Giants fans, and so your perspective on what the Giants are and the heartache and stuff is a little bit different from how Brad and I feel. So what is like your first Giants memory? Like, how far does your memory go back to where you were paying attention to Giant stuff?
Well, I was always growing up just rooting for them, despite my dad and mom not really being Giants fans. They were really both into sports, and my dad kind of leaned more towards these, but he never really locked on to teams kind of in every sport. He just, I think, enjoyed watching sports or jumping from team to team, depending on players he liked. And my mom, again, kind of rooted more for the Raiders and all that, but my family was split.
And then you turned into a 49er fan, which is crazy.
But my family was split between Niners and Raiders, especially at that era. But yeah, the earliest I really can remember is that final Bonds season. And then as you're kind of learning about sports and then learning about baseball, and then at the same time, this guy's breaking Hank Aaron's record. It's like, but it's been tainted. He's been cheating this whole time. And I'm like, wait, what do you like steroids? It does what? But to me, this guy's like the greatest thing. And, in video game stuff, I played MVP Baseball 2005 a lot. We were just talking about the show, that's thing, or Backyard Baseball. So that I was getting into baseball. But I didn't show you this last time, but this is something I still have. It's the Farewell to Candlestick bag.
Oh, wow.
This is what I moved from California. And so again, I'm originally from the Bay Area, born and raised in Antioch, California for the first 18 years of my life. I moved here to Minnesota. Funny that they play the Twins.
They play Twins this weekend, yeah. Or not next, upcoming.
Yeah, the upcoming series. That's the thing when I saw on the schedule, I'm like, oh, it's Minnesota goes to them, not they come here. Because I was like, maybe I should go. But yeah, then as soon as Bond retires, it becomes a Tim Lincecum, Matt Cain, Pablo Sandoval, and Buster Posey. And I didn't have cable growing up at my mom's, so I'd have to watch games on the antenna. But mainly I just read the Contra Costa Times and follow the game there. And my great grandpa would give me his old Sports Illustrateds in terms of like 2-3 weeks old, and he would give them to me. And I just read a lot of like history of baseball books. I had a history of the Giants books. Again, Mays and Cepeda just passed, and I'm reading like, all right, this guy, McCovey, and it's like, and it kind of stops at that Bonds period. So then I got to see what the new chapters would be written. And your oldest son, I think is probably 2-3 years younger than me. I just turned 29 this year. And then you have younger kids. So what they've been witnessing is this fall from the top in a way. I mean, it's almost what's going to happen with the Warriors too. Funny enough, it's that like you reach a certain point in the Bay Area where like guys your age and Rod, shout to We Want Winners. It's like you see dynasties of the past and then down periods and great players during that time, like Bonds not winning a World Series in his entire Giants tenure is something that's like, but then Buster Posey got 3. So it's like, you can take what you can get. And now when we talked on my show about how the Niners might be the new Buffalo Bills, the Giants are, I think, trying to get out of becoming, I don't want to say the new A's because no one can be as bad as the A's, but it's just that we're in this spot where I had said that we should tank because I mean, Paul Skeens don't come around every year. Yeah. But you want at least you want a shot at one of those guys.
That's what's going to happen in the NBA this year. Everyone's going to tank for Cooper Flag.
And I mean, everyone's kind of like overreacting to that practice footage, but that's the whole point of him, his senior high school. Like, this guy is kind of going to be the real deal already. And like college is just going to be him on a bigger stage. Because the G League is what it is, even though it's competitive. It's like no one will watch G League games like they will college games. March Madness will still rule over anything else they can do. But I'm big. I grew up rooting for Lincecum, and that was fun to see. He's probably still my favorite Giant of all time. I'm that era where Lincecum and Kaepernick will forever be my favorite guys of those teams. That like when the Kaepernick thing happened, I'm like, he's still my guy. Even though the fall was ugly, I'm like, I still believe in him. Just like when Tim Lincecum would have those 3 innings, 4-run games. I'm like, at the end of the day, he can throw that ball in the dirt and make guys swing. Like,
I mean, if you think about it, the Lincecum run, it's what is it?
08.
So 08 is 08 really, 09 are Cy Youngs.
Yeah.
Then 10 is a little rough. 11, he's sort of almost back to the Cy Young, and then by 2012, he's kind of done. Like, you know,
he's almost the super reliever too for that World Series run. He was like, let me go to the bullpen and figure it out. And it's like
he threw a couple no-hitters later in his career, but then, you know, on the 14 team, he's like left off the World Series roster. So the rise and then fall was pretty fast, but from a charisma standpoint, I don't know if anybody has touched him outside of Steph Curry in the last 15 years, just for the amount of love that, like, you know, some people will be like, there will, you know, you say anything bad about Tim Lincecum, we're about to fight. Like, that's how people feel about Steph too. And, you know, maybe Brock Purdy gets there. I think Brock Purdy's
it didn't help that it happened to Brock Purdy right away, where people got the torches and pitchforks as soon as he had 2 games under his belt. It was like, this guy might be the second coming. And people are like, it's 2 games. But it's like, who plays like this in 2 games? Like, no one does.
Who's the ringer guy that's still holding?
Steven Ruiz. Get that again. As someone who's a little bit Irish, I hold grudges. I believe in vengeance. But no, I mean, but again, I remember having the 2009 like baseball preview magazine. It was like, Buster Posey, he's the guy to come up for the Giants on the offense. I'm like, Buster, okay, I'll remember that name. And then his first call up towards the end of that year, he was like 1 for 11. I'm like,
yeah, he almost
oh
even
my
didn't
God.
play too. Like he's just like sitting on
Yeah.
the bench for like a lot of it.
And also not to bring up a dark note, but it was also Angel Villanueva, and
Mhm.
that took a really dark turn.
That
Just
took a
like,
dark turn.
like, are we ever? And I feel like this with the All-Star team, when you see like Ellie De La Cruz, I'm like, we never get guys like this. We never get superstar freaks, 6'5", who can run as lightning and field and smash the ball. I'm like, we never get the guys like this. How come?
And
How come
it
it
kind of
works out
goes
like
back.
that?
It kind of goes back to Ramos, because when
Yeah.
Ramos came into the organization, I want to say 2017. He's like a teenager.
Mhm.
That was the attempt at, he's not as athletic as Ellie De La Cruz. Very few are, but that was the idea. Was this guy, if he blossoms, he's going to blossom into an incredible, talented baseball player. And the ride, the Elio Ramos ride, has been, you have to be very loyal to still believe in him in this year when he came up. And so I'll go back to last year, because last year, Brad, talk about loyal, Brad was on the Ramos thing. It's like, I still believe. They just need to give him a chance. And then when he came up this year, we were kind of asking for it. We're like, why not? Like, why not give him a real shot? Because they didn't have anything else. And
Yeah.
the guy turns into an all-star, which is tremendous. And it's so cool to see, because like you said, as a fan, you look at guys like De La Cruz, who are essentially can't miss prospects, and you're like, man, how come we don't get those guys? And I'm not saying
And a lot of
Ramos
times they
is
don't
going,
pan out either.
yeah,
Sometimes it does take them
they may
years.
not.
I think
They
the
may
guy
not.
on San Diego Profile, right? He's kind of the same thing, where he was #1 prospect or top 5 at least, and then had an up and down ride to where he's at now.
He's been a pretty good. He's been a very good pro, but yeah, he never was like that it guy that they thought he was going to be. But I guess to say is, now you just hope that for Ramos, that it isn't just like a 1-year thing, and that he can continue to be consistent, and the Giants' loyalty in him eventually pays off. But that has been the story of the year for me, is to see that happen, because we didn't know if it was going to. Like, we had high hopes, and then it was like, oh, he's kind of buried now. It's like, now it's about Matos and Luciano and all of these young pitchers that they have, who haven't really panned out yet. But we Birdsong is up, and I'm sure Wizenhunt will be up at some point in the next year or two. But yeah, to see Ramos actually perform has been so fun to watch. The guys at bats, I'm not saying that they're like must see, like you have to dial in.
But it is like any pitch could be the one that goes.
He just hits the ball so
fence.
dang hard.
Yeah.
Like everything, even when he doesn't hit it well, he hits it hard. So
Yeah.
it's been great to watch. But you mentioned Logan Webb.
Humble confidence as well. It's like you can tell, like when Bob Melvin told him like he's just like very quiet, and I almost thought like, oh, is this going to be our new Pablo? But he doesn't have that personality. He's just kind of more like,
way more chill. Yeah.
Because I mean, they have similar builds in a way where like they're kind of short, but like heavy, like tanks, but they can move. Like him in center field, I'm like, some of the catches this guy makes is what we thought. I mean, Jung Hoo Lee was doing that when he got there. And
he'll do it. He'll push Ramos probably to left field, which is probably his better position. But for now, like, imagine where the Giants would be without Ramos. Like, it'd be ugly.
Yeah.
Right now. Talking about Webb, you compared him to Kane, and I think that's an apt comparison. If you look at some of those Matt Cain seasons, there were seasons where Matt Cain, you'd put him in, the top 6 or 7-ish starters in the big leagues, but the consistency was more his thing. The ability to keep the team in the ball game was his game. And I think Webb, if you match best for best, I think Webb is actually a little bit better than Kane overall, but it's a very good comparison, because what happens is that as a Giants fan, you kind of take him for granted a little bit.
I was just about to say, that's kind of like, looking back, Matt Cain to me was like, he was there, and not in a bad way, but like he was there. You could rely on him, and it was not always special. But it will look, when you look back, like, yeah, it kind of was special. Like
it was special for the Giants. Now, he's not going to get any Hall of Fame votes or anything, but that's a guy who in 10 years, he's going to have some celebrations about his career and such, because he was an important Giant who's got, he's got a few World Series rings there as well. So kind of getting back to what you mentioned it, and it triggered in my memory. You mentioned Willie Mays and Cepeda. Today was the celebration at Pac Bell Park. I wouldn't say I was close to going, but I definitely thought about going. The reason why I didn't go is just it would be hard for me to get out there and then to come back. Just the time of the day that it was happening. But I did think about it because, not to say that Willie as a player, like everybody who's kind of lived this life is deserving of a celebration like this, but I will give them kudos for really going above and beyond and really making this thing special, opening up the park. I know his son was there. Someone texted me. They're like, "Hey, Bill Clinton's at this thing."
Yeah.
I was like, it's because it's a big deal. Willie Mays was a big deal to so many people. And that is one of the things that the Giants do right for the most part. They will have some situations where maybe they misread the room. Like I know there was a situation with, I think the very early season ticket holders, I think they had like these bricks where they had their names in them or whatever, and they had moved them, or there was something like that. And they weren't very thoughtful about it. But for the most part, when it comes to the fan base and when it comes to how they treat the players, I think they do a pretty good job. And I'm happy to see stuff like the Mays celebration. And, at some point, Cepeda will get something similarly. And it's not that long ago that we lost McCovey. So, this is going to happen. And it's sad. It's sad for me when my dad is like, oh, like these are my guys. And then it makes me think like sooner than later, it's going to be my guys. And then, that's crazy. Just
the title of the show.
To think about. Yeah, exactly. I don't know. Will Clark is probably 60 at this point. And, when I first started watching him, he was like 22 or something. It's like ridiculous. Like, how does time pass like that?
Yeah, it's that thing where as you start watching, like, you're looking up to these guys in a way of like, oh, I want to root for these guys for a long time. And after a while, the guys who come in are closer to your age. And you're like, whoa, what's happening? I mean, we obviously Bronny James just got drafted. And it's like this kid that we constantly saw with his dad is now going to be playing professional basketball. It's like, again, I'm not even 30 yet, and this is happening. That's how. And then Carmelo Anthony's son is next, and Carlos Boozer has kids. And I'm like, am I just going to watch? It's going to be like wrestling. Am I just going to watch the kids of the generation I was half on the end of? Like,
yeah, totally. So the All-Star thing was really cool. Very happy about that. We have
to say this though about the All-Star game.
Okay, this is what I was going to ask you something about it. So go ahead.
Well, like you said, the guys still try to care. And a couple of months ago, a friend of mine, Vin, they had me on their podcast, Oddball, to talk about the NBA All-Star Game and how, again, it's kind of the dregs of the NBA season.
Don't care at all.
They don't care. But my issue with the MLB All-Star Game is the uniform thing. It's with all sports. Like, you wear your own jerseys. That's the best thing about the All-Star Game.
They used to do it. They used to
in both.
That. Yeah.
I mean, I didn't watch those NBA All-Star ones in the mid-2000s when they were having the guys wear them. But I'm like, that looks cooler than whatever you were trying to cook up. Like, I saw what they're going to be wearing. I'm like, this doesn't look good. The ones they wore, I think 2 years ago, didn't look that good. It's just like, wear your own. Because you're representing your team. You're not representing the National League or the American League like that. It's, it's just something that always bothers me with, like, come on. Like, you have it right there. It's simple.
So where are you with stuff like the home run derby, the All-Star game? Like, are you going to pay attention? Are you going to watch? Or is it just like, it's not important? So it's like a day off of baseball.
Because it's like, well, when's Logan Webb going to pitch? Or like, is Ramos going to have a at bat? Like, that's the thing. It's like, it's that, like, I think I watched the 2007 one, and I think I did watch the Melky Cabrera one. It's always kind of been like, if we were only sending one or two guys, it's like, do I really want to watch three Dodgers go up and have and root for these guys for the, even though I don't care about the rest of the National League. It's like, yeah, it's cool to see Derek Jeter play with David Ortiz because they're on the opposing sides more often than not. But it doesn't impact me at all that much. And the home run derby, I was never really into it, even though it's supposed to be fun. Like, these guys are hitting home runs. I'm like, it's just Like make it over, like have Paul Skeens throw the home run balls and let's see who can hit the most. Like,
yeah, you know what I think is cool? It just becomes repetitive is the problem. But when you get the guys who can actually hit the long ones, like this would have been before you started following, but I want to say it was like 1995, 96, 97, one of those years in the mid 90s. Big Mac is on the A's and Barry Bonds is on the Giants. And they just go at it. And it's just like home run for home run. And Bonds beats him at the end. And you're just like, anytime you see Big Mac hit a baseball, you just want to see how far it goes. And you're like, oh my God, that thing went 503 feet.
Is that when you think it started between them of like, who's gonna bulk up the most?
I don't know if you've read the Jeff Pearlman book, but Jeff Pearlman thinks it's
Love Me, Hate Me.
Yeah.
I had it as a kid, but I never, I didn't take it with me when I moved here.
The story is that right around like that 96, 97 time frame when Barry's like, I'm way better than these guys. Why are they getting all the love? It's like 97. And then he's like, what are these guys doing? And then that's when he started doing it. That's the theory in the book.
Well, I loved Winning Time, and Jeff Pearlman wrote the book base. And I was like, that's what HBO needs to do next is the Barry Bonds book. And I know they're doing a documentary, which he says he has no involvement in, but I'm like, the Barry Bonds TV show done the same way as Winning Time, the show would be amazing. Because this is a guy, again, who the media hated, but you couldn't still help but respect what he was doing. Because like they say, like who played left field better. And before all the steroids and stuff, like this guy still hit how many home runs and still how many bases. Like, but and the story with his dad and again, Willie Mays, like,
it'd be interesting. Who would even play him? That's kind of
that's what I was trying to figure out when I thought about it. Because as soon as like the first season Winning Time ended, I'm like, Jeff Pearlman also wrote this book. I'm like, who could play? Or I can't think of it at the moment, but that's kind of I could fan cast it after maybe.
Yeah, I was trying to think like because Barry Bonds, like Barry Bonds like 6'2", 6'3", like off of steroids.
Well, all those guys on Winning Time were probably 6'2", 6'3", and then they cast the shorter actors around them. So.
Yeah. The guy who played Kareem was supposedly really like 6'7".
He looked legit like the most. Like he was probably 6'5", 6'6".
All right, so let's move on. Giants made a trade. The player who they traded was very interesting because for someone who didn't play that much and who was mostly someone who hit against left-handers, the Giants fan base sure had a lot to say about this guy. Austin Slater gets traded, and they bring back Alex Young, who had pitched for the Giants in 2022. He had 24 appearances, decent ERA, gave up a few more hits than innings, so there's a little bit luck involved there. Left-hander, if anybody's paying attention to seeing how the Giants have been handling their bullpen because of their lack of starting pitching, having a lefty ready is probably really smart. But did you have it? Like, I didn't even realize it, but Austin Slater's like the longest tenured Giant on the team before he got traded. He's also their player rep, so sort of an important guy. But did you have did you feel anything in your heart for Austin Slater when you heard that he got traded?
So that's the thing. Really, in 2017 is not when my fandom didn't die. It's I just stopped paying attention to the team as much as I did prior. At that time, I was working full time and then in a relationship. It would happen the same thing with the Niners. I didn't have Sundays available to watch games at that point. I was with someone and driving around and all that. So like kind of really 2017 into 2021, I kind of have up and down spots. So Austin Slater is not someone who I had a passion of hatred or love for even, but every time I would see him come up in the last years, I'm like, this guy just doesn't have anything, does he? Like he's got a funky swing motion and like he can field the ball in the outfield. Like does he add anything? And then looking at his stats now, I'm like, oh God, how long? And they kept holding on to this guy and someone took this guy. Like that's what confused me about the trade. Like someone actually was like, give us Austin Slater. I'm like, I thought they were going to have to DFA. Like you were saying earlier this season, like just DFA everyone. That's the only way to start from scratch.
That was my tweet when they lost the game that they should have won. Just DFA everybody.
But I love the trade for what it's supposed to represent, which is Matos is going to be the guy. And then hopefully next season it's Matos, Ramos, and Giancouli on opening day when he's ready to go. Because I've been all about the youth movement. I think everyone, like you said, the longest tenured guy being Austin Slater. I'm like, anyone from kind of that post Bochy into Kapler era, I think needs to go because it's been treading water. You've only gotten to the playoffs once in this span, and all those guys, whatever they produce, if they're not all stars, then why are we holding on to them? So I love this trade for what it signals in terms of like a new direction.
So I think it's exactly what it signals. My worry is when you get a small sample size of Matos, you kind of feel good about it. Like you're like, oh, the fast bat, he'll hit one where you're like, damn, he really hit that one, and he's running, helmet's flying off, and you see some athleticism. And then you get like an extended look at Matos, and you're like, my God, he's hitting pitches, he's hitting back to the pitcher, he's hitting soft ground balls to shortstop. So my hope is that the investment in him is okay. We've seen some things that we like. We're going to work on some of those other things, because the thing about him, and it seems like this has been something that he's thinks is important, is he isn't striking out this year, and he's making contact, but a lot of that contact is really soft. And I think
meanwhile Ramos strikes out a lot,
and Ramos
crushes the ball over the fence.
And so I think for Matos, the consistency, and even though he doesn't strike out, he still swings at pitches that he cannot drive, and having that discipline, I think, is hopefully where they are with him. But Brad and I had always said, now we didn't dislike Austin Slater at all. The problem is when you have Slater and Yastrzemski on the same team, because they are essentially
the same guy.
Offensively, they are mirrors, right? The mirror image, but the opposite. Yastrzemski, left-handed hitter, so he's going to play against righties. He plays a hell of a right field. Slater's going to play against lefties. He can play multiple outfield positions. So when you have both of them, that means one of them always has to play. And I think the value of a Yastrzemski and the value of an Austin Slater is as a fourth outfielder rather than a starting outfielder. So not having Slater means that Yastrzemski will be less taxed to play if we are going in this movement where Matos gets a lot of the ABs. I still think Yastrzemski is going to play. He's going to start.
Yeah, you still need vets. Yeah, and that too.
And he's going to play right field. He's going to do it well. But
he's going to strike out with runners on base. Ever since you said that, I think like 3 weeks into the season, every time it comes up, I'm like, that's all I see. The first time it happened during a game, I think it was the second Dodger game they had. I'm like, son of a bitch. Double G was right. Like all he does is like swinging, like he strikes out when the runners are on the base. And when it happens, I'm just like, oh, come on. Like
that has been the case where you see guys get on and then you see who comes up next and you're like, I wish the bags were, I wish there was nobody on base, because then I have a better feeling about him. So,
but the Matos thing, to me, I always like to compare other sports. Like, look at the OKC Thunder. Like, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander took steps to get to MVP runner-up. Josh Giddey, he still hadn't developed a shot, and they're like, this guy's expendable. I think the Giants have to take that approach with Matos, Luciano. They just did it with Ramos, or they fully went behind him. Obviously, he's the all-star. And then, the Wisleys, the Fitzgeralds, and Casey Smiths, they're going to have their up and down moments. But I think with Matos, it's like, give him the rest of the season. And if he doesn't produce, then, like this guy will be expendable. And again, it's not, you need a fresh start somewhere else. What they did with Joey Bart, which is we've reached our point with him. It's not salvageable anymore, no matter how high he was picked or how high he was touted, versus let's run Austin Slater back. Cause like you said, because we need a righty versus a lefty and we need someone in the outfield. But it's like, but you also know you're going to get 2 hits every 14 at bats.
Yeah.
And no runs batted in. Like, it's sad thing that's irritated me about this team this year. And I had said in the chat, I think a few weeks ago, where to borrow the Simmons Sal of like, are they the good bad team or are they the bad good team?
Mm-hmm.
And I think they're the bad team that can be good on any given day. They'll have their moments where like it clicks. Like, how do you give up 7 runs to the Dodgers in the bottom of the 8th, and then you blow them out the next day? Like, who does that?
Yeah. So as we are having this conversation right now, the Giants are 44-47, so still 3 games under 500. There is a look at the wild card rankings here. In the wild card rankings, because there are 3, the Giants sit 3.5 games behind the Padres for the 3rd spot. Now, trade deadline is in 2-3 weeks. So if the Giants are within, I think, a 3-game radius of striking distance for that 3rd spot, they may actually go after somebody. I've mentioned someone like Bo Bichette, but Bo Bichette is going to cost a heavy bounty of prospects. But the way that I think of it is, and it's kind of what you just said, which is when you are basically saying, hey, we're going to play some of these young guys, I would also like a young guy who has proven himself. He's having an off year for sure. He's one of the worst hitters in baseball right now for whatever reason. But I would like to throw a guy who's actually had some success, especially for the locker room too, because you have Ramos, you have Matos. Andrew Baggerly mentioned Grant McCrae's name today, who, if you've been following Giants prospects over the last few years, he's been a nice surprise, and then has had some years where he fell off, and it looks like he's having a good year in Sacramento so far. I would like to have a guy who's like, yeah, I was you guys before, and then I did it, and I got the contract. And it's kind of like, for those guys to strive for, you look at someone like Bo Bichette and go, okay, that is the goal. That is what we are looking to. We are looking to be like him. Giants need a shortstop. Nick Ahmed is Nick Ahmed. He's he is exactly what everything that you expected the Nick Ahmed to experience to be, which is that left side of the infield is awesome. Him and Chapman,
it's a dynamite glove, and then it's
great. And then
a car crash over the bat. Yeah,
the constipated batting stance. Yeah, the whole thing. So, I don't know.
Would you want to give up? Because you just mentioned Ahmed, like, and you and Brad have talked about Luciano, who I haven't seen much of. Just like, if he had that short stint, like, I'm not gonna be able to watch day games at work, and then he got injured, but is it worth giving up his bat potential for Bichette, who's already a made at bat? I'm saying, are we going to be scared of giving up someone who can then hit 30 home runs potentially?
So the Elio Ramos experience tells us that sometimes it may take a couple of years longer than you would think. But my issue with Luciano right now is I'm not sure he has a position, and that's kind of the hard part, because he is I don't even know if he's a serviceable shortstop. He does not look confident out there. They've tried him at second in the minors. I know that they've played him there. He kind of has a build of a third baseman, just how his body is.
I'd say why don't they just try first base at this point?
So, first base, you could throw him in the outfield and see if he could be a corner outfielder. Right now, I mean, he could literally just come up and DH, but you have Soler, and you signed Soler for a few years, and Soler's bat is slowly but surely picking up. It's so funny to see him hit leadoff, and he's just like swinging for the fence.
Yeah, you and Brad have talked about that, where like the modernized game, it's like you can put power first, like what they do with Schwarber and all that. And I don't mind that, because I'm like, when you think like video game logic, like, I want the home run, I want that first run right away, and that was the irony about the Guardian series, which was we struck first game 1 and held on, and then they struck first game 1 and held on. It's like, oh, we aren't the comeback kids. Like, we're the hold on for dear life kids. Like,
and yesterday's game was frustrating, but it was only frustrating to me because it was a bullpen. So it was like last week or the week before, Melvin had to burn Jelly, and he had to throw him an extra inning, and then Jelly got beat, and he just had to keep him in because he didn't have anybody's arm. And my worry when he did that wasn't just that, Jelly's throwing these extra pitches and his ERA is inflating because he doesn't have anything. My worry was Well, what about the next couple times he pitches because of this extended period of time? Like, I want him to be good. And so I'm going to be watching Jelly closely because he was lights out before these recent appearances. And I'm a little worried that they kind of used him a little bit too much. Well, it's not even a confidence thing. It's almost like a usage thing, right? Because he's a starting pitcher. In college, they draft him. In the pros, he's a starting pitcher. He thinks he's going to be a starting pitcher. And they tell him this year, we're going to need you in the bullpen, so we need you to be a reliever. And so now, he's got to adjust that, and that's got to be his mindset. He's a 1-inning guy, a 2-inning guy, and that's it. And so you train for that, your repetitions and your throwing on the side, you're sort of doing it differently. And my worry is just that they threw him so often that it kind of threw off a lot of things. I just hope that he doesn't get injured and that he's okay. I mean, you almost look at it and go, man, why didn't we use him as a little bit, maybe like a longer reliever or a starter because he was so good? But now, middle of the season, and he's starting to give up some stuff. So I'm just hopeful that he can bounce back to what he was, because he was like almost, underratedly like the best reliever on the team until just recently. So, but it's so weird because you see Hayden Birdsong come in, and I'm watching him for the first 3 innings of this game yesterday against the Guardians. I'm like, this dude is flexing on the Guardians. Like, he just looks like a little baby face, like pimply.
I think he's 6'2". He's like when a grown child, like in cartoons,
that's what he looks like. He just looks like a child's face on an adult body.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, this guy's just mowing him down. And then he hit that inning.
It was the same thing against Lamb too, at the back-to-back home runs, and he was able to then recover. But that's the rookie thing. Like, you're going to stumble, get back up,
it's like that second time around, you have these really good big league hitters, and they're like, okay, here's what he got me out with the first time.
Yeah.
And I saw it, and now, now he's got to adjust to me. I'm not adjusting to him. And that, that's big league hitting is you see them a second time. Can you get them a second time? And I think, and this is no shade at the kid, because I think he's been doing an excellent job. He came in when they needed somebody to throw some innings. And I hope that this is just development for him, because I imagine he's going to be sent back down when, because Snell comes up. Snell's throwing tomorrow on Tuesday. Cobb, Robbie Ray, those guys are coming. And I
have a whole rant about that. So it kind of goes back to the Bob Melvin thing. So obviously Kapler lost the clubhouse. They hire Bob Melvin, and he's, like you guys have been saying, old school.
Yes.
But my thing also was like, this is also the guy who managed 2 stacked Padre teams that fell apart towards the end of the season. What's this guy going to bring to a team of old vets, and not rooks, but, young, unproven guys? And I think, like you've been documenting week by week, episode by episode, is like, he's just constantly, get off my lawn, old man. And I'm like, why did you? I think it was a mistake keeping Farhan as well. I think you need to be a clean sweep, clean house, with him and Kapler, just start from scratch. You can hire Bob Melvin to get someone with a different philosophy, because I think him being like, I'm going to bring in Chapman because I have a rapport. I'm going to bring in Blake. I was just with Blake. I can vouch for Blake, but It's like, he also has Scott Boras negotiating his contract. And obviously every team, when it came to those last few clients, was like Les Grossman and Tropic Thunder. Like, we don't negotiate with terrorists. When it came to Scott Boras, that was how they were treated. Like Jordan Montgomery, teams were like, no, thank you. Cody Bellinger, no, thank you. And Blake Snell, like, you just won the Cy Young and no team wants you. Like, and then they get Cobb and Ray. I'm like, so you have these guys who are going to miss half this season, and you still want to try to contend. Again, being 3 games back up 500, it's like, I don't like this, because they think when we get Cobb and we get Ray and when Snell's ready, I'm like, Snell won't be ready. If we're having platoon trouble now with Logan Webb and Hicks and Keaton Wynn and Harrison, who got rocked on Saturday, that was tough to watch. I was able to watch that game, and it was just, again, like that Lincecum thing of like, it's early and this guy's already lost it. But I'm like, you're gonna burn again, like you said, Sean Jelly's cooked. I think you should call Randy Rodriguez the Viper. I think you got to hone in on the Randy part.
Dude, that guy's been good, right? He's
I
been a
like
nice
seeing him.
surprise.
Mm-hmm.
Nice surprise.
But it's like you're going to burn through him. And Luke Jackson, who's like the new George Contos, Hunter Strickland, where when he comes in, I'm like, I don't trust this guy to tie his shoes, let alone throw a pitch. It's like, they're in a state, and I think it's Bob Melvin being like, obviously they've been the most injured team in baseball, right?
Yeah.
No one's been snake bit like injuries, especially the key guys like they have. But it just also comes to like, I think that stubborn old man. It's like, I'm going to make it work. Damn it. Like that dad, like, don't talk. Like, and I'm like, I don't like this.
My son calls them hangers. He calls them Luke Hangers Jackson. He just throws hanging breaking balls. I just get hit out of the house.
I mean, more often I miss his outings, but I just see the results like, God, like, come on, like again, like,
you know what the Melvin hire may have been. Now we'll see.
I think I said in the chat, it was goodwill. It was like you said, like they played the footage of young Bob Melvin, like, hey, and they brought back. I don't think a Pat Burrell is a Giant. Okay, let's stop with the Patty Burrell. Like he was in Philly.
He's a Bellarmine Bell to me.
Yeah, and Matt Williams and Despecker, they did the like, let's save face. Let's like the WWE does. Let's bring back the faces of yesteryear to. I mean, it's
a pretty good PR move though, if you think about it. It is pretty good PR. But what the Melvin hire may have been, and we see this in other places. It may have been an overcorrection, right? Because you have Kapler, and you were leaning so hard to one side with the way that Kapler handled the baseball team. And so you're like, okay, like this team didn't react the way that we thought, and he overstayed his welcome, and he just was not like, he was not getting.
He was the opposite of what he was said to be, which was a people guy.
They didn't believe in him, right? They didn't believe in the things that he said. So how do we correct for that? Well, we bring in the guy who's a little bit older school. You know, he's had success in multiple places. He's got a
Jeff Fisher success. It's you finish 500 or you come just short of a divisional game success. That's how I always view Bob Melvin is.
He did really well in markets that were not great, right? He overperformed in a sense. And so if that's what you're looking for, you're like, hey, we need someone to help us overperform. But I think the overcorrection is we want the anti-Kapler. And I don't know if they needed the anti-Kapler or did they just need someone who was a little bit not, maybe 50% of Kapler and then maybe 50% old school, but they went like 100% old school. So that's what happens. And a lot of it is PR, right? Because the Giants fans last year told the team, we don't believe you. The old Jay-Z line, we don't believe you. You need more people. They're like, we just don't believe in the regime. Like, we don't think that you guys can put together a winning franchise. So they went back and they're like, okay, let's, so some of this is definitely PR, but
the Chargers just did this. They went from Brandon Staley's numbers to, do you remember when Jim Harbaugh threw the ball for us? Well, he's coaching the team with his old school ruggedness. But I think the thing was,
I'm watching that thing like a hawk. I want to see, I think Harbaugh gets through to them for like 2 years. And then they're like,
I might be not as into them as I am with the Niners, but I do want to see, you mentioned that book, on We Want Winners, the Harbaugh era book, the Behind These Walls, right? I might have to check that out.
Yeah, it's really good. Yeah, it's really good.
Just because my view is like, fucking Trent Baalke, you jackass, like thinking you deserve the credit. Like, look at the success pre Harbaugh.
Yeah,
there was none, and look at the success post Harbaugh. There was none.
Yes.
But I think the Bob Melvin thing is, if he's supposed to be old school like baseball, like then tell the guys to swing the bat every time.
See, but then you have an old school manager and you have a new school baseball ops guy. It's got to be a collaboration. So you got to give
the commentators like these Giants guys. They like to sit on pitches and wait. I'm like, yeah, and you can't trust umpires these days. Watching the highlights is how I catch up. I'm like, when it's below the knees, it's like strike. I'm like, at least swing the bat so you don't look like a fool, because you're again, like Dana White says, don't leave it in the judge's hands. That's the Giants at bats, is don't leave it up to the judge's hands when it's when it's 0-2 or 3-2. Like swing that thing. At least that's what I love about Ramos. At least like he doesn't care. He'll strike out because he knows if I make contact, it can go far enough. But all these other guys are just like looking and like, oh, and then you go there defeated, and they were like, what's the point of having these guys? I know your son, I think, made fun of Matt Champ. Like, isn't this guy supposed to be a good hitter? I'm like, I thought he was supposed to be a Golden Glove because like every other play, it's like he either fumbles the ball picking it up, or it's the most amazing third base play you've ever seen. It's like it's this hot and cold. When they beat the Cubs on that walk off, when it was a legit walk off,
yeah,
I'm like, this was an ugly win. It was like in Seinfeld, he's like, I'm gonna break up with her, Jerry, tonight. You're so ugly. You're hideous, but I love you. That's this team at this point. They're the ugly team that we are rooting for. It's like,
yeah, and I think I've said this multiple times. Until they prove otherwise, they are the most average 500 team that is out there.
That's what's dangerous.
And
it's just
so
be bad, and get young guys reps at least. I won't be mad at you for losing games if Matos and Ramos.
So to your point, they are 3.5 games out of the wild card, San Diego, and you know, by this time in 3 weeks, it may be more, and they may just be like, okay, we cannot buy, you know, the guy to take us there, but they have guys who Matt Chapman, Blake Snell, those guys may be gone next year. So if you are trying to invest in this season with those two vets, do you owe it to the fan base to be active at the deadline to go for that third wild card? Because you look at what happened with the Diamondbacks. Diamondbacks make the World Series being the most average team last year, and they just got on a nice little run at the end. But
that's almost that's like not an anomaly, but that's like, come on, like that happens once every 8 years where a team completely comes out of nowhere like that.
But do you think the Giants fans would buy that? Like, could you
like, are we that team?
Could they buy the idea of that?
I almost, when the season started off, like after the first month, and Keaton went and looked decent because he had that good showing against the Mets that one night.
Mm-hmm.
Kyle Harrison hadn't gotten injured. I'm like, could we be the 2010 team where we have young pitching take us there, and these old and young bats that like go up and down, and all you got to do is get a 2-run lead and hold on to it for dear life? I'm like, maybe. And then it went downhill ever since then with the Jung Hoo Lee injury, and then, you know, who's coming up, who's going down, and then Jordan Hicks gassing out, which was expected as soon as it was said that he was going to be a starter. I'm like, how often do relievers succeed when they switch to starters? I'm like, I've never really heard of something like that in a long time, at least I can remember. But yeah, I think I'm at this point again to compare it. Like, you don't have to do what the Sixers did to get Simmons and Embiid and all that, but what happened when all those guys played together was like they at least became a playoff team because and again, I don't want to be bad for 2 straight years, but they signed Chapman. Like I said this in the comments in the chat, and you would sit on the air, was that they're the money to blow team. They couldn't get Shohei, they couldn't get Yamamoto. I had said this when you were on my show, that the Jung Hoo Lee thing was just like, it went right by me because I'm like, we didn't get the 2 guys we were supposed to get. And then this guy becomes, you know, a glimmer of hope, and then he gets injured. It's that he's Finn Balor at 2016 SummerSlam right into the wall, and his shoulder, and it's gone. It's like, oh, I can't have anything good.
Yeah. And I think that's what Giants fans really felt, was like, you know, we are so unlucky. Even the things that happen well for us, they are doomed to fail. And you know,
that's me personally too.
Hopefully for Lee, he is able to bounce back. I don't know about the shoulder thing. I don't know if if it becomes a chronic thing or not. But he was exciting and like, you know, you rooted for him.
He was fearless. Like, okay. I get fearless in the field, and then at bats he would go at pitches. I remember you and I think his first week you're like he'll sit, but then he'll attack. He's not afraid of like, all right, he sees what these guys are throwing now. He's like, okay, I know what to expect. Like you were saying with how guys were facing Birdsong, he's kind of like processing right away. Like, I'm not going to be afraid to swing the bat now, but where they're at in terms of if Snell and Chapman, but those guys are going to pick up their options because it's an easy paycheck. And it's going to be up to the Giants of like, can we ship these guys out? Because they can't even ship out Conforto or Flores or Wade, we have guys that no one wants. So that's the thing we're in, and we need bodies. So that's why those guys continue to get starts, is that you got to fill the team. And I know that's what people are trying to say of like, don't tank, we still need a team. But I'm like, do you want a team that's going to be 70 wins, or what's the difference between 70 wins and 65? It's
well,
still not the playoffs.
I think where they're going, they're probably like between a 78 and 82 win team. Now, if they decide that, okay, we're not in the mix, we're not going to chase this, the trade deadline, but you also have to think about this. Robbie Ray, he's coming back. Does he feel like this team is competing? Because if he doesn't, then maybe he does try. Maybe he shuts down and decides like, hey, free agent market, I'm going to opt out and I'm going to be a free agent next year.
He does the Ben Simmons.
I've shown enough.
I'm not feeling it today.
But you do have to think of that, in that you have these vets who
I think Snell's going to do that, to be honest. And based on what you guys report, where he's like, they want me to pitch and I'm not ready. I think he's going to say, I don't want to be here. I think, again, it was.
But does he opt in or does he opt out?
Yeah, I think he opts in, because his whole thing was, I didn't have a spring training. But it's like, well, whose fault's that?
Yeah.
Like, and Matt Chapman, I think he'll opt in because they, like you said, they're not going to go full board with Casey Schmidt yet, which might be the wrong decision. Because again, at this point, you're going to reach up that like, let him go or hold on to him, because that's what you need to do with guys who have been up and down the last 2 years. Is we just have to see what we got, because when we let you go or we get nothing back in a trade, no one's going to be mad at like Casey Schmidt goes and succeeds somewhere else, really, to an extent. I mean, that's when I get scared of like, do we trade Luciano for Bo Bichette, and then Bo Bichette then decides maybe in a year or two I want to go? Because I always think about look at Zach Wheeler's an all-star. We had Zach Wheeler. We had half a season to Carlos Beltran, and it was like, that was to try to salvage what they thought was going to be a playoff contending team. And then we lost a guy who...
they were trying to defend their championship.
Yeah. And we have nothing to defend. So it's like, what's the point in keeping... letting go young guys and getting someone like Jazz or Bichette who's proven something, but it's like, are they going to prove it to be 83 wins?
Yeah, and no, it's a good point, because and the only reason why this even matters is because the wild card is a little bit more wide open.
I hate that.
In previous years, the Giants may already be 7 or 8 games out, and then it's already decided. But now they do have a shot. And the other thing, and I mentioned it before, is the fan base was just very unhappy with the franchise overall. Like I've been a fan pretty much since the early-ish 80s. I vehemently remember 84, but it wasn't always, the Giants were not always the dandy of the Bay Area. But once they built that new stadium, which is now 24 years old, which is amazing, Oracle Park, there has been a lot of goodwill with the fans. And these last 5-ish, 6 years, I think it's starting to deteriorate a little bit. So you're saying tear it down. I wonder what the season ticket holders would say. Do they look at a tear down as, okay, this is an investment in the future and the team's going to be better in a few years if we do kind of tear it down? Or do they see it as, we've been tearing it down since 2016 and nothing has happened except for the fluky 2021? But that's a real question, right? Because the Giants are now saying this year, like, oh yeah, our ticket sales are up, our attendance is up, we're doing well compared to Major League Baseball. But you take a step back. Now, do they go backwards again when that stuff really counts for their economics?
It's that tough thing when you have to factor in the business side. Like, they still have to make money and sell jerseys, do whatever big. And we're not a national TV team anymore. Again, like the game against the Dodgers on Fox and the Rickwood game, it's like those are the only time we'll get mainstream spotlight and the national exposure. And they're introduced to like today's Giants. They don't have Buster Posey anymore, but watch them play. It's like, And I had said this when the free agency thing was happening. Like, we never get top guys ever. Like Juan Soto, we can throw all the money at Juan Soto. He's gonna be like, I'd rather play on a winning team, like Aaron Judge did. And they were right to not pick up the Carlos Correa. I think that was the smartest thing that's paying. I was like, we don't trust this guy's medicals. And the Mets are like, well, they don't trust his medicals. What are we doing? Like, we're just as desperate as they are to give someone our money. And no matter who's going to come up, like I said, as much as we can't find Ellie De La Cruz, we can't sign them. So it's that thing where they've always, like I said, been homegrown. So why risk half a season of Bo Bishop for the rest of this year, and then next year you have them at the start, or with Jazz Chisholm and anyone else who could be available? Where it's like, at least if you develop these young core guys and then you become the sellers instead of being the buyers. Because right now you have to give guys your money, so the fan base is like, oh, they're so cheap. When it's the opposite, like, no, we have money to spend.
Yeah.
No one wants to take it.
Yeah.
And is that because the whole, like you've said, like, is it the state of San Francisco in terms of the economy and all that, where it's like, it's just as expensive to live in LA when it comes to California? I mean, like, the reason they're successful now is they just, every year they get Mookie Betts, Freddie Freeman, and now Shohei Ohtani's. Like, they'll continue to add a guy and still not win the World Series, so it doesn't matter. Again, it's guys want to compete. And I think Chapman and Snell took paychecks, not in a negative way, because you still have to make a living. But I think they just took paychecks. Like I said, they had a rapport with Melvin. Like, we could trust this guy and we get to do what we love. And they probably knew at the deadline, there's going to be a team that'll be desperate to trade for us because we're guys with track records and we could play in October potentially. And so far that hasn't been, or won't be the case, maybe.
All right, so the Giants play this week. Toronto comes into town Tuesday through Thursday. Brad and I will actually be at Wednesday night's game and Thursday's day game. So I think it's a Logan Webb, Jordan Hicks combo. Blake Snell, like I mentioned, throws Tuesday. As long as Brad and I have been friends, I do not think we've ever watched a baseball game together. Because
really?
When we were in school, he is the radio the sports guy for our radio station, and I just kind of was like, oh, he's doing all the stuff for the radio station. He's cool, but we were not as connected as friends until after college, when you could do stuff like fantasy football, and he has this historical fantasy football league that we still play in that goes from like 98 or 99 or like some crazy year that we've been just playing in forever. And so by the time that he and I are like pretty decently close, he moved to Reno.
He went away, yeah.
And
went away. Like he moved.
He literally
went away.
And the last time I saw him in person was my boys were playing AAU basketball. So we're talking like they're like 12 or 13. So this is like even like 12 years ago. And we had a tournament in Reno. So I got to see him, and then I got to see his family. And his daughters were so young, and now they're both teenagers. So it's wild. So we'll get to see each other Wednesday night at the game. And Rod from We Want Winners is going to be out there. I got a ticket for him so that he can come. Actually, I got a ticket for my wife, but then she's out of town. So I was like, hey, Rod, you got to come in. This is perfect. Both of my kids will be there. So it's going to be like this nice little reunion, even though it's not like, Brad has seen my kids very much, but this is like this cool event. And then Thursday, he and I are going back and going to a day game. So that's going to be really cool. The Blue Jays are struggling, kind of like the Giants. They're 41-49, and unfortunately for the Blue Jays, they just play in a badass division in the American League East. They are 8.5 games out of the third wild card. Boston right now holds the third wild card spot. And then over the weekend, the Giants play the Minnesota Twins, who are they are leading their division 51-39, and only I guess what would they be? No, they're second place. Sorry, the Guardians, who the Giants just lost 2 out of 3 to, are leading the Central. The Guardians have the third best record in all of baseball, behind Philadelphia and Baltimore. So the Giants winning game 1 and having the opportunity to really, they should have won game 3.
They were all close games. That's what was frustrating. Is that
I think they played up to a nice level. They just could not pull that third game out like they should have. So because they beat the Braves 2 out of 3, I was not unhappy that they lost that third game, as I would have been if they had lost 2 out of 3 to the Braves, because they were kind of playing with house money a little bit. But really, now you come home and you have to take advantage of it. But yeah, you're playing another good team in the Twins. And, the Blue Jays, I think, are a little bit of a disappointment, but the Giants will see Kevin Gossman. He's going to be back, so that'll be pretty interesting. And then, again, like if you like Bo Bichette, if you like Vladdy Guerrero, there's some guys who will be right front and center. I mean, I've never seen Vladdy Guerrero play live, so I'm going to be very interested to see him walk up to the plate, because that's a big dude. I've only seen him, hit giant home runs in the home run derby, so that'll be fun. But yeah, so Giants have a nice little homestand here. Hopefully they can have a winning homestand, because then next week is the All-Star break, and you have the All-Star game on Tuesday, and then the following weekend they go Colorado, LA before coming back home for Colorado, and then the A's to wrap up the month. All right, so we're kind of done talking about baseball, but I want to ask you 2 more questions, or one question, but generally.
I'd say I don't have a drink like like he does to talk. Oh, my drink for the night. I'm like,
yeah. Well, I got my
Gatorade. So.
I've been drinking a June Shine Spirit, a vodka soda with passion fruit. I found these at the grocery store, and I grabbed one. But okay, so when I was on your podcast, I'll tell you to plug away at the end.
Oh yeah, no.
You talked about kind of like the idea of these franchises.
I was hoping you were probably going to ask this.
are going for people who will spend money on stuff, and so one of those was Bad Boys. They brought out the 4th movie, and the other one was Beverly Hills Cop. If you have a Netflix account, you can watch the 4th Beverly Hills Cop. But were they resounding for you in any way? Did they hit in any way for you? I think Bad Boys did a pretty good job at the box office. Netflix is a little interesting because of the way that their analytics work. Who knows really what's
legitimate and what's not.
Yeah. What did it mean for their service? But both of those franchises came out with their 4th movie. Like, what did you think about just kind of their importance, I guess, for the summer?
So that's the thing. My co-host Banks and I had just recorded for the first time in a month and a half this past Sunday, and I broke news I still haven't seen Bad Boys Ride or Die. He's like, oh, come on. The last couple of weeks have been so busy, and then I kind of wanted to do a rewatch prior, mainly the 3rd one, but I'll have to pass on that. But I rewatched all the Beverly Hills Cops. I hadn't seen 3 all the way through. I really only remember the first time he shows up in Wonder World.
Yeah, Wonder World is like 10 minutes away from me, by the way.
Yeah, there was an old like those keychain photos of me and my dad on a Great America ride when I was like 2 or 3. I think he's like, we had to sneak you in because you were that small for the ride that I was on. But yeah, so it was like watching 3, and I didn't hate 3. I'm like, this is a strange movie in its tone and direction. It's a cash grab of a movie, and Jerry Bruckheimer basically kind of said so when they were promoting this. He's like, I didn't have any involvement in the 3rd. Paramount just kind of did it. Yeah. But watching 3 for the first time, I'm like, oh, it has its moments. It's kind of funny to see him try to do a different tone with John Landis, and they had history with Coming to America and Trading Places and all that. But the 4th one, I thought the first hour was really good, and then the second half kind of died down a bit. It didn't deliver. I didn't have too high expectations, but I loved the opening of him driving in a cold Detroit, because we see hot Detroit in the first movie, and now we get to see the cold, and he goes to the Red Wings game and has the good back and forth with the guy. Like, I didn't think you'd like hockey. Why would you think I wouldn't like hockey? And he's like, did you know he played in the All Black League? I had no idea. And that whole back and forth. But I think Eddie still, like I had said, in even though I didn't like you people, he still had his fastball at times. And in this, you can see it too, where like I thought him and Taylor Page had good chemistry as him as father and daughter, and they have that good moment where she does the. Well, actually, we are with the fire marshal. Like she has his traits, even though they've been separated. There were some good callbacks, but I was just mainly disappointed how there was that they scaled back on the Judge Reinhold, because him and Eddie had the best chemistry in the first two, and John Ashton was always great when it was the three of them. So I'm like, just kind of wasted potential in terms of like, you kind of use more of this and less of that, but it was not bad by any means. It was a solid 2.5 to 3 stars to me.
So going back to 3, the problem with 3 is it was so unbelievable with how often the bad guy shot and missed, and how like there's a moment.
That's Star Wars too. When you watch like the whole stormtroopers can't hit anything.
Have you ever seen Harlem Nights?
That's the one of the blank spots. Yeah, but I know it's
not great. I rewatched it the other day just because it was on Paramount, and I was like, okay, I remember this movie's not that great. But they make fun of that idea. So
yeah, Harlem Nights, where he's like, "What are you shooting at?" Like
in Harlem Nights, Arsenio Hall plays a character, and it's funny because Arsenio Hall in the movie, Arsenio Hall's brother is Tommy from Martin. And his name is Tommy in real life, and his name is Tommy in this movie too. But Tommy dies, and Arsenio Hall's character thinks that Eddie Murphy's character, Quick, is the one who killed him. And Eddie Murphy's like, no, I had nothing to do with this. So Arsenio Hall and his cronies, they have machine guns, and they're just firing like crazy. And just like finally there's like an opportunity for Eddie to get some shots out. And they've probably fired off 200 or 300 bullets at this point, and he's just chilling. And he looks up and he blindly fires 3 bullets and kills all 3 guys. And he looks up and he's like, oh. And so they're kind of making fun of that.
Yeah.
Beverly Hills Cop 3, all of that stuff, and there was no like wink wink at all. It was just like so much gunfire.
The tone of it,
gunfire,
was that John Landis like real dark, overt humor, but like this is kind of sinister when you read beneath the surface. And like again, Judge Reinhold gets shot 3 times, and he walks like, "How you guys doing?" It's like, shouldn't he be dead by logic? Like all these guys, he took the most gunfire out of all of them. But
by the way, I think there's an AEW match going on while Judge Reinhold is being held hostage. There's like a half of a second of video, and it's wrestling.
It looked like a lucha. No, I caught that too. It looked like a lucha match from like,
in Beverly Hills Cop 2. Guys. In Beverly Hills Cop 2, there's a scene, and Vince McMahon is calling a battle royal while Paul Reiser's character is like hanging out, reading his Playboy magazine, but he's watching some WWE. So there's like 2 WWE scenes.
That's the thing. Like the second is, it's not the sequel that surpasses the first, but it has its moments where it's got Tony Scott's great direction. It's got more Paul Reiser, which I love, and that's what I enjoyed about this. Is he's the chief now, and he's tired of him. Again, this was really just like Bad Boys for Life and / Ride or Die was supposed to be their Top Gun Maverick, the guy who won't. He's too committed. He can't let go. He's married to the job, not his wife or not his family. And that was done well of why he's not with the daughter. And the whole, like, they were going to put a hit out on me and anyone close to me. So that's why I sent you away. And Joseph Gordon-Levitt and her had good chemistry, but that storyline was still underdeveloped because it's like, they don't even get the happy ending you think they would get. But the movie wasn't about him and her, but it had its moments. I forgot, like Damon Wayans and Chris Rock had their cameos. Chris Rock. I park limos. What am I going to do with this? Parking next to limos. The Avion Crockett, I enjoyed their scene at the country club. Like, just because I'm your brother, I'm supposed to give you a key. Like, yeah. And then he does the English accent. Like, oh, you one of them code switching guys. Like, come on. There's some best to me that had its moments where I'm like, oh, they knew what to do, but it wasn't a disappointment. I thought it was funny how the guys, Adil and Bilal, after they did Bad Boys for Life, they were supposed to do Cop 4, but then they committed to do the Batgirl movie that ultimately got, shelved and then never released. Yeah. But I was like, oh, I think their style and direction probably would have been a good fit for this too. But I think Eddie Murphy also said like the reason he said, I'm too old to keep doing action like this. So that's why it's kind of spread. And he kind of holds his own too, like throughout it. You'd think like a guy his age can still hang. Because he does the gun trick with the one guy where he shows up like, I'm the new goalie, and then like switches it back at him. Like,
I think they're gonna do a 5th movie.
See, that's the thing. Like, I hope not, because it's like, it's again, we watch wrestling. John Cena just announced his upcoming retirement next year. I'm like, you got to know when to let go. And I think this was Eddie Murphy knowing he's letting go, because this was supposed to happen really a decade ago when it was supposed to be him and Brandon T. Jackson.
By the way, have you seen the
pilot
trailer? Yeah, the pilot.
No, I haven't. Not yet.
It's actually really good. It's like surprisingly really good.
It's funny. My brother Banks, my co-host, I'm like, because he's the same way. He had seen him when they were in Hollywood Circles, but like Brandon T. Jackson was supposed to be that guy post 2008, 2009.
He's Axel Foley Jr. in the pilot.
Well, he was Martin Lawrence's character's son in the Big Mama's House 3 that I never saw. I would have to go back. So that's when he was doubled. And then apparently Eddie Murphy's daughter is dating Martin Lawrence's son in real life, which is like,
oh wow.
Imagine those guys being your grandparents when you're a kid, like literally the funniest man of the 80s, and then second, third funniest man of the 90s.
I mean, you just have to watch Life to see what they would be
when
they get
older. But yeah, if they do a 5th, I'm like, well, it's Netflix too, and that's their whole thing, is to oversaturate and just kill you to death. I mean, I know you cover Cobra Kai, and I wasn't a devout Cobra Kai watcher from the YouTube
YouTube Red.
I caught it when it was on Netflix. But even then, it's like the last season, I'm like, we could end this. We could have ended this already. It's a show I enjoy watching when it's out, but I'm also like, it's too many. Again, they're wrestling fans as well. Like, there's too many face and heel turns in this for me to want to see more and more.
You know what it is? It was season 1 was ultimate fan service.
Yeah,
and then
it's the best idea. What if I was actually the hero instead of the villain?
Well, after they figured out that people really, really loved those characters and wanted to see them again, they created their own mini universe, and so much so that they're getting a new movie out of it. Like,
yeah, I don't like that either. That was the thing. As soon as they were like, it's going to combine Will Smith's movie, which we were kind of led to believe was supposed to be its own. Yeah,
Machio's in though, which makes me think that
that's another reason I'm out.
It might be okay, because I don't think he signed. Like, he lived through Karate Kid 3. Like, he knows, what could happen when you do something bad like that. So, I mean, the fact that he's in has me intrigued. I'm kind of with you in that I'm not sure that it fits or why they're doing it, but the fact that he said yes to it is intriguing, because he understands what could happen when you do something bad. Because Karate Kid 3 was not great for him, and
but they did a decent job salvaging it with they were able to, for sure. And I think they're actually creative writers. Like I said, they just lean into wrestling logic too much, because they're actual fans of, like, now Miguel's evil and now he's good, and then Hawk's evil and now he's good. It's kind of too much back and forth in that. But like I said,
how do you create superheroes out of kids, right? Like, that's kind of the idea to me, is like, oh, this is like a take on, young people's superheroes without the superheroes. They're just regular kids. Yeah. So it's a little bit.
That's why it's so funny when the only person who has sound reasoning is the mom. Like, shouldn't all these people be arrested? Like, what's going on?
I love she's my favorite character in the whole thing. The mom is awesome.
And I mean, I actually really liked the John Kreese origin story. I'm like, this is genius. Like, how does a man get that cruel? Yeah. Well, the war, obviously, but like what happened in the war, it was actually what led to it. But that's the thing, like, when they talk about combining that Karate Kid and Machio's, I'm like, and I was going to ask my co-host this, and I'll ask you, like, even though one's Paramount / Netflix now, and the other Sony being Bad Boys, would you want Beverly Hills Cop in Miami or the Bad Boys in Beverly Hills?
Well, what's hilarious is Martin Lawrence.
Well, you had told me Martin Lawrence.
You had told me that was Eddie Murphy. Yeah. So, but Eddie's too big at that point, right? And he's only going to do something where. But it's funny because then they work together again 4 years later for Life. But the crossover would probably be corny. A cameo if there was a cameo,
or if they if he like he's someone that helps him on a quick job.
Yeah,
like,
if they're like crossing paths and they're like, Axel, what the hell are you doing in Miami? And he's like, sorry guys, gotta go. And then like that was it. Like I think that would be fun, like fan service for both of those franchises. But
well, because they were supposed to do 21 Jump Street and Men in Black because they were both
Sony. Oh really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, they said the third. Well, it was not supposed to be the third, but the 21 Jump Street / Men in Black movie with Will Smith and potentially Tommy Lee Jones was supposed to happen. But then Channing Tatum recently just said the 23 Jump Street script is really good and he doesn't know when it'll happen because those guys are busy making a Ryan Gosling movie right now.
Interesting.
But
all right, we went a little long on this, but I was very intrigued about what you thought, and I didn't know when I was going to have another opportunity to ask you. But give me your socials and your podcast where people can find you if they want to follow you from listening to this.
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at Davis aka Drip. When I was on Black Wrestling, that was my nickname, Drip. I normally wear glasses when I record, but I didn't do that with you because I thought you'd be like, what's up with this? He's wearing sunglasses to record. That's kind of my main look when I record. And I talked wrestling over there for some reason. Then I started my own pod with a guy who's my brother now, Banks. Banks versus Davis on YouTube. We talk about wrestling, sports, movies, TV, all sorts of random stuff. And you can follow me on Instagram at DavisColumnDC. I don't tweet as much because with the way Twitter is today, it is what it is.
It's messy, man. It's just.
Well, I'm not going to have an argument with my fingers. I'm not going to. I'd rather, again, and when it comes to takes, I'd rather do my takes when the red light's on. So it's like.
Yeah, I feel you.
Yeah, that's where I say it.
All right, here's to hoping, at least for Brad and myself, BSPN, hoping for a good Giants week. I'm just like praying, crossing my fingers. But
especially since we'll be there. I mean, you and Rod at least saw a win.
Season. We did. We did.
I saw probably the most embarrassing losses
that was
we had last year.
The Minnesota game was rough.
And I posted the shot of me on TV when after Pretty throws that pick and that catches me shaking my head like. I was like, why did I have to see this?
All right. You can follow Davis at his Twitter and his YouTube show. So appreciate you again coming through.
I got caught up to the show.
Well, I was kind of like, well, what am I going to do? And then I was like, wait, I wonder if Davis would come on with me.
Yeah.
And then
we
were joking.
Anytime.
We were joking about it that I had actually messaged you through Discord, and then you didn't get back to me, and I was like, "I'll take one more shot on Twitter," and then you did get back to me, so it worked out.
It wasn't just like hello, like you're talking to all of them. No, I was just like, sometimes I won't check stuff, but like I said, no, it was an honor. I really enjoyed this, and that's thing when you guys record. If I don't catch it live, especially the BR stuff. Because when you go after a game, like I've already stayed up to 11 my time.
Yeah, it's hard. The VR stuff is hard, and it's hard for us too.
I listen the next day, and that's the thing. Like I always catch it on the audio the next day, or same thing with We Want Winners. Like when I'll see like you and Rod, I'm like, they did an episode. What the hell? But yeah, no, like I said, I'd love to join you anytime. It was an honor.
All right, man. I appreciate this. So check Davis out. So for Davis, I'm Double G. If you follow our Instagram at BSPN_media and then the YouTube at BSPN Media, we'll have a few photos, shorts, reels, whatever you want to call them. We'll have some stuff from the games that we're going to check out. And I'm hoping that we get to say hi to my buddy Darren Chan, who's he's the radio engineer for KMBR for the Giants. So hoping to see him too, because we love chatting with him. So all right. Thanks to Davis. See you when we see you. Peace out.